Hi everyone, we're back with the next instalment of our Ógra in Conversation with series, and today we have Stephen Donnelly, TD for Wicklow, in the hot seat with us, so thanks for coming on, Stephen.
Delighted there, Jane. Thanks for having me.
No bother at all. So Stephen, you were first elected to the Dáil in 2011 for the Wicklow and East Carlow constituency. Before that, you did your Masters in Public Administration in International Development at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, which is very impressive. You were named the Politician of the Year by Miriam Lord in the Irish Times in 2012, and you're currently the Fianna Fáil spokesperson on health. So safe to say you've had a busy few years since 2011.
It's been pretty full on, all right. Yeah, no question about it. And busier now than ever, obviously, with the health brief and everything that's going on, and programme for government talks and all the COVID stuff. Yeah, it's pretty full on. And 3 young children who need to be homeschooled.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So my day is kind of starting at 7 a.m. at the moment, and it's finishing about 10 p.m. So yes, it's busy old time.
But sure, you wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, sure.
So I suppose, Stephen, we'll start off with the tough questions, and then we have the light-hearted ones at the end. But I suppose, what is your earliest political memory?
So I had no political involvement at all in school, in college. Then I moved to the UK. I was in the States doing some. So I was working in Dublin, then moved to the States to MIT to do some postgrad work. Came back, broke my back. Was out of work for about 1.5 years. Moved to the UK. So no political involvement at all. I was in Shane Ross's house a few times when I was very, very young. The first political action I took was marching against the war in Iraq in London. So it was Tony Blair's decision, his ill-fated decision to join up with W. And myself and a lot of other people went out in the streets of London. So that was my first political activity. I guess for me, politics came quite late. I never really considered politics, but I always had a serious goo for public service. So my mum was a teacher in a community school. I'd always been involved in sort of community work, those kind of things. The reason I ended up doing a master's in international development actually goes back to the Ethiopian famine. I remember as a young boy watching these images coming through, and no one had ever seen images like this before. You know, images of the little babies with the distended bellies and all of that horrific stuff. And it just, to be honest, it left an indelible mark on me. I remember thinking as a young boy, I mean, this can't be right. How do I get to sit in a house with a family and get to eat 3 meals a day and go to school, and other children in another country are literally starving to death? There was a cartoon done. Was it Martin Turner, who does the Irish Times? He had a cartoon that I remember from the time, and it was on one side was the West and aeroplanes and food, and then there were all of these poor starving men, women, and children, and it was question: how do we deploy food to starving people with nothing at our disposal other than the entire apparatus of Western society? And I remember thinking, yeah, like how can this be happening? So I thought I'll get involved somehow. So my background is more policy than politics. You know, I was never a member of a political party. I was never at a common meeting. I did attend meetings. The one other campaign I had done was they were building a harbour in Greystones, or they were destroying an old, beautiful Victorian harbour and putting in place something just was not in keeping. So I got involved in that, and we were having a few pints. And this is in 2010, end of 2010. And I said, look, I'm going to have to get involved somehow. And one of the guys said, run for the Dáil. And it was as bizarre to me as me saying, listen, Dara Jane, why don't you go and become an optical surgeon or a professional dancer? I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I don't know any politicians. not sure I want to know any politicians. I'm a policy guy. And he said, no, we need people who understand the policy in Parliament. So that kind of sat with me. And eventually I ran. And we had literally no idea what we were doing. So myself and two of my friends who I worked with were project managers. We sat in a room with a load of whiteboards and we said, okay, what do you need? Well, you need posters. They all put up posters. Okay, well, then we need photographs. Has anyone got a camera? You probably need money. Okay, well, who can we ask for money? Well, you need you need canvassers. Don't they knock on doors? I think they knock on doors. You know, and well, what do they give out when they knock on doors? Well, don't they have little leaflets? Okay, well, we're going to have to get some leaflets. And it was literally that. It was three Egypts with a combined political experience of 0. And at the end, we had over 100 volunteers and we knocked on 17,000 doors. We raised a bunch of money. And I snuck in. I got the last seat after 3.5 days of counting by about 100 votes. So this is how little I knew, right? So I woke up the next day. It's like, well, okay, what do I do? So I was exhausted. So I think I might have taken 2 days and slept. And then I got on the dart and I came in and I walked up Marion Street and there were 2 guards standing at the gates. And I said, hiya, Stephen Donnelly here, reporting for duty. And they said, oh, Deputy Donnelly, congratulations. I'd never been called deputy before. I didn't know the TDs were called deputy. But they were kind of smiling. And they said, Deputy, look, it's a great honor, great privilege. And, you know, I hope you do very well. This is the Museum of Natural History. What you'll be looking for is the Dáil. So they pointed me to the entrance to the Dáil. So that is, I literally hadn't a breeze. So really my first political experience was running for election.
Brilliant. And I suppose then you've really had a whirlwind 9 years then, I suppose, since your election in 2011. So I suppose, how did you get from there to where you are now? You know, you're
with great difficulty. Yeah, look, I was in a technical group in 2011. All the small parties and the independents were in one technical group. So I learned as I went, and it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. Like, the first few years were hard and exhilarating and confusing and deeply frustrating, because you would work so hard, you know, and like, my training was to basically spot the mistakes that the IMF make that end up hurting people. And I could see an awful lot of good people being badly hurt in a load of different ways. And I had some solutions. But of course, nobody really would listen, because you're an independent TD, so who cares, right? So you would put in weeks of work and do policy documents and articles in the papers, and you have your speeches and your private member's bill. And then I'd be opposite Michael Noonan regularly, because I was focusing on finance, but others, and I put in all of this work, and they just look and go, nah. And it was hard. It was very hard, because you're tired yourself. It's very emotional, because you're meeting the people whose lives are being destroyed, and you want to help them. And it's incredibly difficult to do, you know. And so there was a moment, it kind of evolved over time, but there was a moment which was the sale of the Irish nationwide mortgage book. 13,500 families were having their mortgages sold to vulture funds at a huge discount. And I did an awful lot of work to say, don't do this. If you're going to sell these at 50% discount, whatever the discount is, let the families buy them. They'll be able to refinance, their mortgages will fall, and they can get on with their lives. And it's morally the right thing to do. It is economically the right thing to do. It is socially the right thing to do. And it's entirely doable. And again, I put in a load of work, and David Hall and myself worked together very closely on this. And they just, same thing. They just went, nah, not doing it. And they sold them to the vulture funds, and people's lives were destroyed. Little children's lives were destroyed. And I remember going back up to my office, and I was exhausted, and I was furious, and I was really upset for the people who were just going to be destroyed. And I thought, this is too hard. Like, you're getting nowhere. You need to be in a political party, you know? So I kind of looked around, and I thought, I'm not seeing this here. Oh, the other bit was, I come from the private sector, but do a lot of work in the charity sector and in public services. And for me, those three work together. They make each other stronger. And what I saw in the Dáil was this bizarre construct whereby you were either sort of right or left. You know, if you were pro-business, somehow that meant you were anti-equality. You know, and if you were, and the people I saw from the left doing really good stuff on equality of opportunity and trying to protect vulnerable people, they seemed to view the private sector as this inherently bad thing, you know. And the great advantage of being in the technical group for years was I was in this really fascinating group of people with massively different views of the world. You know, you had Maddie McGrath in there, you had Richard Boyd Barrett in there, you had Claire Daly, Mick Wallace, Shane Ross, John Halligan. So it was an amazing opportunity to be able to really absorb all of these different views of the world and see the strengths in them and what I perceived as some of the weaknesses in some of the views. And I thought, hang on a second, we're thinking about this wrong. These things work together. You know, our communities work together when there are great local jobs and when the businesses are embedded in the community, and we've amazing sports clubs and scouts and all of this good stuff in the arts, charity and public services. And I just didn't see that. And so I took another mad figari, it turns out, and decided, well, I'm gonna set that up. I think that's needed. And so I approached Catherine and Roisin and Catherine Zappone and a few other people. And the Soc Dems was formed. And that was an incredibly difficult process. And it didn't work from my perspective. And I appreciate that there are people in there who believe it has worked, and that's fine. So I left, and it was a very difficult thing to do, really difficult thing to do, like to found a political party and then leave it. Not so much on the decision itself. I was absolutely comfortable with the fact that there was literally nothing I would be able to achieve on behalf of the country or my constituents if I stayed there. And it was very difficult because I hurt a lot of good people. And I had asked a lot of good people to walk up a mountain with me, and they did. And I left. And it would have been easier at a personal level to come out and say a load of things, right? So if you look at the two people I set it up with, actually, they've both left parties. And most of the time when people leave parties, you know, they go out onto the plinth and they talk down the party they've left, and they make the case that, you know, they are the hero and that they had to do it and that, you know, they're on the right side and everyone else is awful. I took a decision to do none of that. Because I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful for politics. And I didn't want to hurt and insult people I had worked with. So many of whom are still in there, and who I have a great deal of respect for and affection for. So that was, on a personal level, incredibly difficult. So I had worked very closely with Michael McGrath on the finance committee, and had always been really impressed by him. And I had been observing Micheál for years in the Dáil, and had always been really impressed by him. And I saw a bunch of TDs who I had been in the same room as since 2011, and then a bunch of new ones come in 2016. And I just thought, this is an impressive bunch of people. They are actually centre-left, because the narrative in Fianna Fáil had been that Fianna Fáil was centre-right. And in fairness, maybe that was true in years gone by, although during the bubble, equality increased in this country massively, thanks to Fianna Fáil. And absolute poverty was eradicated thanks to Fianna Fáil. And I know from people I've spoken to that actually a core focus was tackling poverty and building up public healthcare services, or public services. And so I said, look, I'm gonna talk to these guys. This actually feels like a sensible place to be. And when I was back in my previous incarnation in a party, I had met a bunch of people in Fianna Fáil who had said to me, Stephen, you're in the wrong place. You are essentially purple Fianna Fáil. Like, you are centre-left, pro-business, pro-public services. That's our core value set, you know? But for reasons we all understand, I hadn't been willing to listen to that for a while, you know? And then I got talking to Micheál at length for hours and hours, and spoke to a few other people, and was getting to know them and getting to see the various people in the parliamentary party at work. And also I'm liberal, you know, I'm socially liberal. And I saw more and more socially liberal TDs in the party. And I just thought, actually, I think they may have been right. I think maybe this is the place. And so I joined. And that was, on the decision, a very easy decision in the end, because I knew it was absolutely the right thing to do. On a personal level, it was really tough. Like the abuse was, still is to an extent, but certainly at the time, the abuse was horrific. You know, it was awful stuff. I do understand a bunch of people saying, hang on, you know, you were our guy, you know, we saw you as anti-establishment. I'm not anti-establishment. I mean, I've worked in large corporates, you know, but you were a voice, you know, speaking truth to power, and sure, now you've gone and you've joined one of the two big parties. So how is that credible? It is credible. It's entirely credible. But I can understand how people were annoyed. So I get it. But the level of abuse was horrific. And I remember getting
that's something you have to like put up with. Just bringing something else into this, like I suppose people don't see the extent of what the kind of online trolling or the comments or the abuse or anything like that, and you ask your family to essentially jump off this cliff with you when you enter into politics. So, and like, how hard have you found it to have not only your life put in the public eye, but also that of your families, because you have been high profile. You did make the move to Fianna Fáil, and that brought your family into it more so than some other politicians who just kind of coast along.
Well, it's not easy, right? And the standard response you get from all politicians is, Ara, should we just ignore it? Nobody ignores it. Nobody ignores it. And the problem is these bloody things, right? So back in the day, if people were really angry with you, they could come and see you, or they could write you a letter, but it took, you actually had to do something rather than just kind of sitting, you know, at work or at home just firing off nasty stuff. And of course, an awful lot of it is fake. An awful lot of it is fake accounts coming from particular sources. And it's orchestrated to make it look like there's more abuse than there is. Actually, on the doors, when you go out and you talk to people, it's fine. I've been through canvassing on European elections with your good self, on multiple local elections, and then in the general election, people will say to you, look, I'm not voting for you because, you know, I've never voted for FF and you've joined FF now and I used to vote for you once. Yeah, okay, totally understand that. Face-to-face people are fine most of the time. But look, you have to compartmentalize it. And the greatest antidote to it is meeting real people. You know, you basically have to remind yourself all the time that social media is not real. It has a real impact, as we saw from Sinn Féin in the election. Their social media campaign was masterful, and it paid huge dividends. And it's something that we in Fianna Fáil need to get much better at really quickly. The abuse, yeah, look, it is what it is. You know, you deal with it. So the best antidote to it all is going out and knocking on doors and meeting people, because in the real world they're not like that. You know, something is going to have to be done, or our politics and our society is going to become more and more divisive, and it's just not who we are. One of our great strengths, I think, in Ireland is we're pretty moderate people. Now, there are times that's frustrating when I was trying to get people to come out and march on the streets about the promissory notes and debt write-offs and all of that stuff, and people wouldn't. You know, that was frustrating. There is a divisiveness happening and a populism happening that we've never had here before, and we're going to have to figure out the social media stuff. And if we want brilliant people, young people in politics, men and women, we're going to have to do it, because it is not reasonable for me to say to you, hey, Dara Jane, listen, I think you should run for the council. And you know what? I'd love to see you throw your hat in the ring for a Dáil seat at some point. However, you are going to be on the receiving end of horrific personal and gender-based abuse every day from a bunch of bots and ne'er-do-wells. It's not a reasonable ask. So yeah, so we gotta sort it out. And unlike me, you're probably not emotionally dead inside, so it might affect you.
I don't know, I've been in politics a while. So then, I suppose moving on, in terms of your achievements to date, what I suppose would stand out for you, and then what are you looking forward to working on over the next Dáil term or achieving during that time?
So achievements, there were a few things that I got done actually as an independent, contrary to never get anything done. They were few and far between, but there were one or two nice ones. One of them was the Land and Conveyancing Act was going to be passed. So there had been a lacuna in the law whereby banks couldn't move for possession of homes for non-payment of mortgages. And it had been put in by mistake. It was never meant to be there. And there was a very clever senior counsel had spotted it. And he and I, Ross and I, had worked together, and David Hall, they were in New Beginning together, worked very closely together. We were big campaigners for keeping people in their homes. And we spotted this, and Shatter was the minister, and they were moving to close this lacuna out so that banks could repossess. And so Ross and I wrote to Shatter, and we said, look, we know you're going to do this. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. I had one independent voice, and there were whatever number of government TDs. So it was going to go through, but we will support it if you add add something that basically is revolutionize the whole thing. So up until then, if a bank moved for possession, the courts could not consider any of the extraneous circumstances, which obviously is nuts. And we said the judge must be able to consider all manner of relevant factors to keeping people in their homes, to rescheduling the debt, to writing debt off, to doing all that stuff to create sustainable mortgages. Shatter, to his credit, did. And he introduced an entire section of the bill, which Edmund Honohan, who is the master of the High Court, he came out publicly at the time and he said, this is a game changer. And one of the reasons there have been so few evictions in Ireland throughout all of this is because of that section. Because now, when banks hold people in and say, well, they're not paying, I don't care why. I don't care that they've lost their jobs. I don't care that the bank sold them a mortgage that they never should have. Don't care. I want the house back, and under law, you've got to give it to me. The judges could now say, no, I'm not giving it to you. We're going to restructure the debt. Or we're going to give them a debt write-off, or we're going to postpone this out for a year and see where we get to. And it completely changed the whole power balance, and it gave power to the courts that they never had before, and that power to protect families. And it was profoundly important in that we had the bill fundamentally changed to stop vast evictions. And it's one of the reasons they never happened. Yes, there have been evictions, but we've never seen the rate of evictions that other countries have. And so that played that part. It's not the only part, but it played a part. So that was huge. The other thing, Dara Jane, as any TD will tell you, is really the stuff that you feel best about is when you help individuals. You know, when you help a mother get a new wheelchair for her little girl. You know, when you get to keep a family in their home, when you secure funding for a brilliant local charity. You know, the big stuff is important, but it's slightly intellectual. Yeah, it's heady. The stuff that really, I think, gives you the energy to keep going it is individuals. You know, it's helping little kids, it's helping mums and dads.
And I've seen that from you as well. I mean, I think it was the first day I ever met you properly, and we were in Wicklow on the European campaign with Malcolm, and we went to the Open Door centre, and it was just amazing to see you interact, because obviously, like, I'd never heard, I knew who you were, I knew you joined Fianna Fáil, never met you in my life, and it was amazing. And the one thing you went in and you said was, as your representative, what can I do for you here to make things that bit easier? And you know, I think we were there for an hour and a half. I remember kind of ringing people saying we're going to be late because we're doing something here. But it was just brilliant, and getting involved and things like that. So I thought it was really, really important, and that's obviously the kind of politician that you are, which is great to see.
Thank you for saying that. To be honest, I think that's the kind of politician most TDs are. You know, like, we all have to knock lumps out of each other in here, and sometimes it can get pretty heavy. But actually, the vast majority of TDs work their asses off every day for individuals and families and organizations in their constituency. You know, there's a few messers, but you know, but they do, like, they work bloody hard, and it's a great thing. It's a lovely thing to be able to do, is to just help people and help organizations. I'm sure isn't that what politics is? Trying to do a bit of good. Absolutely. As to the second part, the small second part to your question, what do I want to do in the next whole term? Look, what I want to see really quickly is a government in place, right? The players on the pitch are Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Greens. There are all sorts of challenges and opportunities that presents, and everyone has very mixed views. What would I love to see? I would love to spend the next few years making universal healthcare real, right? So Sláinte Care is basically universal healthcare, but nobody really knows what Sláinte Care means. It's a word. What it means is universal healthcare. And that's really important. And that basically means that you can get access when you need it to good quality healthcare that is either free or eminently affordable for you. That is a single tier system. And it's going to be, excuse me, it's going to be incredibly difficult to do. It's a huge challenge. But it's profoundly important. I want a universal healthcare system, a single tier system. I don't care if there's private hospitals there. That's fine. Yeah. You know, if people want to pay extra money for fancier rooms or whatever, that's fine. It's grand, no bother. But I would love to be part of making of that universal healthcare and having a situation where, you know, if you're sick, or your mum or dad are sick, or your little boy or girl is sick, that you can get great healthcare. Like, we have amazing doctors, amazing nurses, amazing healthcare professionals, but we can't get to them. So it's really hard. It's really complex. It is going to take years, but we have a plan. We've a good plan. We've a plan that can actually start seeing results very quickly. And that's what I would love to be part of, is making sure that people get the healthcare they need when they goddamn need it, not 3 or 4 years later.
So I suppose then, Stephen, between the homeschooling and being in the Dáil and meeting constituents and everything else that you're doing, What do you enjoy doing during any spare time that you might be able to wrangle?
Listen, my day starts at 7 a.m. and it finishes at 10 p.m. There's nothing going on. There's nothing going on other than work and homeschooling at the moment. What do I like doing? I love sports, as in playing sports. I don't watch rugby. I watch rugby, but I don't really watch any other sports. So last year I trained for and did my first triathlon, which was awesome. Bloody hard to begin with. And the run was a killer. I'm a swimmer, right? So I used to be a lifeguard and a swim coach. So the swim was fine. Cycling is kind of cycling, right? I mean, as long as you don't want to go too fast. The run, on the other hand, sweet Jesus.
Yeah.
That hurts. That hurts. So I would love to do that, but everything's closed. The time I would normally do a bit of training has been taken up with homeschooling. So I'm trying to do a bit. I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment is I'm doing, Joe Wicks, the PE guy, him, right? So me and the boys are doing Joe Wicks in the mornings.
Brilliant.
It was an ab session this morning. I'm feeling a little sore. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, so
who's winning? Who's doing better, you or the boys?
Oh, the boys, are you kidding me? Like, they're young, they're elastic, right? And they can just keep going and going. So love sports, love swimming. I love cooking. I've always enjoyed cooking. So I'd spend a bit of time doing that as well,
I've made a couple of terrible attempts at banana bread myself. I had to jump on the bandwagon. It didn't work out. I know you're the right person to ask this question to. Any funny canvassing stories?
I had a moment, I think, in 2011 where it was late and it was dark. And I knocked on a door in Bray, and this lady came out. She was very nice. And she said, there's 4 votes in this house. And I guarantee you all 4 if you do one thing for me. She said, you see that yellow line there at the side in her estate? I said, yeah. She said, if you promise me that you'll get rid of that so that we can have more parking around here, I'll give you the 4 votes. You can have the 4 votes. And I took a deep breath and I paused and I said, no. She said, what? I said, no. Like, our country is in the middle of crisis. And I'm not running for the Dáil to move that yellow line for you. I'm running because I want to try and help the country. So no, I'm going to be brutally honest with you and tell you, no, that's not why I'm here. And was getting ready to walk away with my team looking at me going, nice one, asshole. You just cost us 4 votes, right? And she smiled and she said, correct answer, you've got the 4 votes.
So then I think that's all our hard questions covered, Stephen. So we can. Are you ready for the really hard bit now, the quick fire?
Hit me.
Perfect. Okay, so Stephen, barrier Lions tea.
Lions tea.
A politician from another party that you admire.
Oh, there's loads. David Norris.
Yeah.
Just think he's amazing. I caught half of that program, the one where they bring their own places. Like, what a guy. Like, what an extraordinary advocate for human rights, for gay rights. Like, just amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's your favourite place? And you cannot say Wicklow.
Other than Wicklow.
Other than Wicklow.
Grogan's.
That's the best answer I've had so far on this series. What is your best or worst joke, Stephen?
Okay, it's slightly long, so I'll tell it a bit shorter. Okay, so the Pope arrives in Dublin, right? Paddy's sent to pick him up in the Pope mobile. Stretch limo, gleaming white, tinted windows, 4 aerials, the works. It's beautiful, right? Pope gets in the back. Paddy heads back up towards Dublin. He's on the M1. And the Pope kind of knocks on the glass and he says, listen, you wouldn't mind giving me an owl go, would you? So what? He said, they never let me drive in the Vatican. He said, I'd love to just give it an owl go. It's a beautiful car. Paddy says, listen, Padre, you're the Pope. You can do what you want, So he pulls in, they switch. The Pope's driving. Of course, the Pope floors it, right? He's doing 60, 70, 80, 90. Eventually, he's doing 150 kilometers on the way back into Dublin. Squad car pulls him in, right? Cop goes up to the window, knocks very angrily, says, "Excuse me, sir, do you realize," as the window comes out, "do you realize you were doing hundreds?" Jesus Christ, it's yourself, Father. I had no idea. You know, you were doing 150 in the car. The Pope says, "Listen, my son, Dominus Ocus, perhaps you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I don't really know the deal here, not used to driving. Maybe we can work something out, you know?" So he says, "All right, leave it with me." The guard goes back to the car and he radios into the sergeant. He says, "Sergeant, I have a problem. I've arrested a VIP for speeding. I'm not quite sure what to do." And the Sarge says, "How important is he?" He says, "He's pretty important, Sarge." And he says, "Well, is he more important than me?" He says, "Ah, yes, Sarge, he's more important than you." And he says, "Okay, well, is he more important than the inspector?" And he says, "Yeah, he's more important than the inspector." Sergeant says, "Is he more important than the commissioner?" And the guard says, "Well, I don't know, but he's pretty important." At this point, the sergeant loses it and says, "What are you talking about? How important is it? Who is this guy?" The guard says, "I don't know. The Pope's driving."
Thanks a million for sitting down with us, Stephen.
Thanks for your time.
And I hope you and the family are safe and well. And
Likewise. We'll see you around Leinster House soon, hopefully, or in Wicklow, even better.